call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Trish.
Mrs. Brew?
Here.
Mr. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Menegini?
Here.
Mr. Marraro?
Here.
Mr. Pop?
Here.
We'll move on to the approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as stated. Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Move on to approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 20th, 2023. Do I have any questions on the minutes? If not, I need a motion.
Make a motion to approve regular meeting of September 20th, 2023. Support.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Approval of manifest 2020.
Nice etiquette, Mrs. Mayor.
Am I gonna get this in?
Shut my volume off. Let's see. Manifest, sorry guys. Manifest 2023-19. Do I have any questions, Scott? Do you have any
Nothing
questions?
for tonight.
I have none, thank you.
Jeff?
I do, yeah, page 1. Under admin, financial, legal, amounts level, professional services, you called it those professional services, Grant. Just a joke, but. No, but seriously, Sophos hardware subscription for what?
That was the firewall.
GoTech? That was the project?
Yeah, that was
Okay.
the firewall replacement.
That was a replacement?
Yep.
That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Rico, do you have any?
None.
And I have none. If I have no questions on the manifest, do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve manifest 2023-19 in the amount of $211,548.19.
Support.
Mr. Marraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Menegini?
Yes.
Do we have any previous questions from the last meeting? I wasn't here, so I don't know.
None.
Okay. We'll move on to public comment on any item of interest. Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on any item of interest shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Move on to public comments, agenda items. Anyone in attendance wishing to address the council on an agenda item only shall do so now at the podium. State your name and address for the record. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. We have none. We'll move on to appointments, announcements, and presentations. Item number 1, WPPI presentation, leading the purpose. And we got Tim from WPPI here tonight. Welcome, Tim.
Yes, thank you. Would anyone like a copy of the presentation? Kids?
Yeah.
Okay. Any of you want it?
Yes.
It would be up here.
It is in here? Oh, we have it. We have it.
Okay.
It was in the book. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, great. All right. Thank you for having me tonight. I was thinking on the way up from Sun Prairie today that the first time I came to Norway was about not quite 20 years ago. And the occasion was Ray Anderson and Joe Pickert had scheduled a meeting of municipal utilities from the Upper Peninsula that were concerned with power supply. And I came to that meeting and gave a little presentation on WPPI Energy's power supply resources and approach to power supply. And now it's encouraging, to come back And that's not really WPPI's power supply, it's yours now. You are owners of WPPI along with 50 other municipal utilities and one co-op. So what I'd like to do today is give an update on WPPI Energy. The presentation, if I went right straight through it, would be about 15 minutes. I always like it if there's questions and discussion, and as long as that's okay with you, if people ask questions along the way, I'd be happy to take them. So going to the first page of the presentation there, what you see on the screen, here's a little bit of key information about WPPI. We were are a joint action agency that was formed in 1980. Joint action means it's a group of municipals working together to accomplish something that we would have a hard time doing individually. So we have 51 located in 3 states, and the little dots on the map show where our members are located. We are governed by a board of directors. Every member has a board member, which is Dan for you, and then there's an alternate as well, which is Scott. So I see, like at the annual meeting, I saw Scott there and got to visit with him a little bit, have breakfast with him. And then of the board of directors, there's an 11-member executive committee that meets monthly and runs the business affairs at WPPI, like a normal board of directors would do for a public company. As far as our size, we peaked in 2022 at 999 megawatts, almost to 1,000. And then this year with the hot weather in August, we hit 1061. So a pretty big jump, which is our all-time peak. The previous peak was set back in 2012. It took that long to set a new peak. Total assets of $750 million and annual budget of about $520 million. Going on to the next slide, this shows our mission and vision, and our members really put this together with us in the business plan. So the key elements in the mission, there's 3 main things that WPPI does for and with its members. The first is power supply. The second is services that the members use to help serve their electric customers. One of those services is having an energy services manager, Jesse Roberts in your case. And then the third is effective or advocacy. That's trying to influence the policies that the state and federal governments implement for electric utilities. And our members have a huge role in that. We don't have the same amount of money that investor-owned utilities have to help pay for candidates, election campaigns and so forth. But what is really effective is when you have mayors and city managers and council members contacting their congressmen, making a trip to Washington or Lansing to help influence. That has more effect than donations to re-election campaigns and the like. The vision on the right-hand side, the key there is working together. One other thing I wanted to say about the mission, like there's three legs of our main purpose. There's also 3 aspects to power supply, and you'll hear that coming through this presentation. One, we shoot for reliability. We want the lights to be on when you want them to be on. We also want it to be affordable for customers, and we want it to be responsible. And what we mean by that is that it's safe and that it's environmentally good, or as good as it can be. Next page. We're in the 2nd year of a business plan. We do a business plan every 5 years. It's shaped very much by our members. We come out and do meetings with subsets of members until everyone has input, and then that business plan shapes what we do over the next 5 years. So we're the 2nd year into it. Key objectives are the same ones that you see in our mission, and what we're doing this year to advance those objectives are shown on the bottom. One is long-term resource planning. That's in my department. I head the power supply department, which is operations, planning, and generation. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on that later, but the basic idea is we have expiring contracts that by the early 2030s, we have a fairly good-sized need to fill, about 400 megawatts by 2033. And when you go about building power supply resources, new generators, it takes pretty close to 10 years to get approval to build them and actually get them built. So we're up against it for getting going on finding a replacement for expiring contracts. We'll, of course, look to extend some of them, but we have to have alternatives. The second one there is member interconnection process for solar. This would be like, we're seeing a lot more people put solar arrays on their houses. 3 years or so ago, we probably had 300 of those system-wide on all 51 members. Now it's over 1,300. Are you seeing some of that here in your community?
A little.
Yeah, a little, yeah. Some areas like Sun Prairie, we get a lot. Anything close to Madison, anything close to the Twin Cities or Milwaukee, we're seeing a lot of solar. And so we're trying to make that interconnection process easier for municipals and their customers, so that it's easy to track them, it's easy to show regulators if things are called into question, what you're doing, make sure that they're connected safely to the grid. Next is organizational staff development. What that is for is our workforce is aging. You probably see that in some of your businesses too. And we probably, like in our power supply area itself, in the next 10 years, we will have about 40% of our employees retire. So there's a major effort to develop the younger analysts and operators to prepare them for the leadership positions so that we can continue to serve for years to come. Next one is on power costs. You see what our average cost of power for our members was by year there. This is expressed in dollars per megawatt hour. So if you, as customers, you're probably more used to seeing it in cents per kilowatt hour. $71 a megawatt hour is 7.1 cents a kilowatt hour. So you see that it was fairly flat until we got into 21, and then 22, there was a pretty big jump up. And what happened at the end of 2021 and continuing into 22 was the price of natural gas went way up. Now, you might wonder, why does that affect the price of electricity? Well, we use natural gas to generate some fraction of the electricity, but more importantly, usually it's natural gas generation that sets the marginal price in the wholesale market. So when we're buying energy from the wholesale market, usually it's that gas price that sets it. Now, what has happened since 2022, well, in 22, we were 9.5% over budget because of the gas price. So going into 23, we looked at what is the gas price in the forward market. We set our budget for that come January, and the price dropped.
Why does gas set the market?
We're in a regional marketplace, so there's it's called a regional transmission operator, and it's called the Midwest or Mid-Continent Independent System Operator. It operates over 13 states. And so all the utilities in that area, like us and We Energies and UPCO, we all sell from our units into that market. We quote them a price, and then they tell us whether to run or not. And we also tell them what our load is going to be. So what MISO does is they stack up the bids to buy, so how much load there's going to be for every hour of the day tomorrow, and then they look at the offers to sell, and they start with the cheapest one, they stack them from cheapest to most expensive, and they see how many of those they'd have to take to meet the load for tomorrow. And the last one to clear sets the market price. Everybody that gets run gets that same price. And usually at the top of the stack is gas-fired generation. And so that sets the wholesale price for everything.
Tim, isn't natural gas also the most common fuel for electricity production?
Across the United States it is. In MISO, it's not. It's changed a lot. It's getting close to the point where natural gas is the biggest one, but coal generally is still a little more prevalent. I'll have some pie charts later that give you a feel for that for our system. Okay? So this year, because that natural gas price dived, we're running about 10% under budget. So we've got that 1 year fluctuation, but we're back to a stable price now. Next page, here's the pie charts. I wanted to give you a feel for our strategy as we go about building this power supply for roughly 1,000 or 1,100 megawatts of load almost. And the biggest thing I want to emphasize is diversity. When we build a power plant, it takes 10 years to get it online, and then it lasts 30 to 40 years. It's impossible to tell 30, 40, 50 years into the future what is going to be the best source, most economic source. So rather than try and guess what that's going to be, we diversify. So we have a little bit of a lot of different types of resources. And not only in the selection of the technology, but in the fuel type, whether we buy or own, who we buy from, making sure it's not all coming from one supplier. So if you look at our power supply portfolio, we own about 431 megawatts ourselves, which is about 40% of our mix, and we buy 60%. Now, most of those purchases are really long-term, like 15 to 20 years, and then we fill the last little bit with short-term purchases, which could be a day, an hour, or maybe out as far as 3 years. No single unit provides more than 10% of our capacity. I'll give you a reason or an example of why that's important. In August, which was a very hot month, first day of the month, our biggest coal-fired plant had an issue. It had a forced outage. It burned out the bearings on the shaft. It's been down ever since. It should come back in the middle of October. Well, with that unit out, we had to go to the market to replace it. So because we've limited the size, only 10% of our portfolio had to be replaced. If that unit would have been a 500 megawatt unit that we owned all of, we would have had over half of our power supply out and have to replace the whole thing. Another thing, manageable future capacity needs. Until 2033, we have a little bit that we buy a year at a time, about 100 megawatts out of the 1,000 megawatt load. Another thing we're doing is we're decreasing our dependence on coal because there are higher carbon dioxide emissions with coal plants. There's an effort to reduce that, so we're phasing out coal. It always has to be balanced against the economics and the reliability of the system. You can't shut all that stuff off and still keep the lights on. The pie charts demonstrate how our portfolio has changed over the years. If you look at 2010, coal supplied 62% of our energy, and then you see nuclear at 16, renewables. Renewables would be like wind and solar at 13.4, and then natural gas at 8%. Now, this last year, coal was down to 34%. So we see a lot less coal, more gas, and more wind and solar, the renewables. You see that slice on there for renewables with no RECs and renewables. RECs are renewable energy certificates. So when a wind turbine generates power, you get energy and you get a tradable renewable energy certificate. We're required to have a certain number of renewable energy certificates, but we have surplus because we have more wind and solar than would be required by laws. So we take the surplus and try and keep our costs down for our members by selling the surplus RECs.
Where's hydro fall under renewables?
Pardon me?
Where's hydro fall under renewables?
Hydro is a renewable, yeah.
I wasn't sure because you mentioned solar and.
Yeah, I should, I should have, because hydro has
By the way,
been,
we own that.
yeah, hydro has been the renewable for many years, but there's not that much new hydro being developed. The new stuff is mostly wind and solar. One of my favorites is hydro, actually. I traded power for years before coming to WPPI, and one of our biggest trading partners where I worked was Manitoba Hydro, who has 5,000 megawatts of it. It's really amazing system. All right, the next page shows you where our biggest resources are located. So most of our customers are located in eastern Wisconsin, so you see most of our power supply resources are over there too. The little symbols by each one designate what type of power there is. So our coal plants are Boswell in northern Minnesota with the smokestacks, and Elm Road, just south of Milwaukee on Lake Michigan. And we have gas-fired units, those are the little flames. Just to give you a quick overview of what they are, there's two types. Most of ours are peaking generators. It's a jet engine that's fueled by natural gas, and then it spins a generator. They're relatively expensive to operate, but they're cheaper to build. So low capital cost, higher operating costs typically, but good for meeting peaks. And then we have, so that would be like South Fond du Lac and Island Street. We also have Nelson, which is a contract from 2 units in Illinois. Those are called combined cycle. So they have a jet engine with driving a generator, and then they take the heat from the exhaust and they make steam with that heat and use that to spin a steam turbine too. So for the same amount of fuel, you get more power out of a combined cycle, but it costs more to build. So they run typically all of the daytime hours, but often get shut off at night when our loads are lower. We also have nuclear. We buy from NextEra, which is Florida Power and Light, out of the Point Beach nuclear plant. And then on the buffer land around that, they have to maintain a lot of bare acres, and so they've put solar panels there, and we buy from that 100 megawatts of solar. That takes over 500 acres of land. 500 acres of all solar panels. Let's see, I think that about covers it. The wind, 5 different wind farms, 290 megawatts altogether. The biggest and most economic one is the one in Illinois, Bishop Hill 3. Biggest piece in any single resource is Boswell at 115 megawatts. Environmental response, so this is showing what progress we've made on reducing carbon. Coal plants, you know, the first issue years ago was acid rain, putting out sulfur dioxide. Those have been so cleaned up since that, but now the concern is carbon dioxide. And we're on track to reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 45% by 2025 as compared to where we were in 2005. We're trying to stay abreast of all the rules that are coming out. Our CEO served on the Wisconsin Governor's Task Force for Climate Change, and then he's also a member of the American Public Power Association's Climate Task Force. And while we want to reduce carbon dioxide, and we'll do so, we also have to keep in mind affordability and reliability, because it won't be successful unless we can maintain those two things too as we reduce carbon. One of the biggest issues we have as we add, well, how we've been getting to this objective, and our target is 0% by 2050, we've been adding wind and adding solar. We've been reducing the amount of coal-fired purchases, and when we get out into the mid-2030s, we won't burn coal anymore at Boswell and Elm Road. The plan there is to burn a different fuel. I think it'll be natural gas, but the major plant owners are not committing yet what exactly the fuel supply will be. As you add wind and solar, a concern is that they are not, you can't turn on wind and solar. They're only there if the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. So how do you match load with generation? And so we're looking at things to do that. Gas-fired generation can make up that gap, or big batteries, but big batteries are very, very expensive at this point. The next slide shows why you might have a problem. This is the output of the solar array at Point Beach. So it's a 100 megawatt array, and you see some lines on the graph. It shows 3 different types of day in the summertime. So this was from 3 different days in June. So the red profile is where it's a clear day, sun shining all day long. So early in the morning, just after 6 o'clock, the panels start to produce. They get to 100 megawatts pretty quickly, and they stay there most of the day, and then they fall off as the sun sets. If there's clouds that come through sporadically through the day, then you end up with a profile like that yellowish orange color. That is pretty tough to follow load with something that looks like that. And then on a cloudy day, you get a profile like the blue on the bottom, you hardly get anything. It also changes between summer and winter. The next chart shows the output on a sunny summer day versus a sunny winter day. Of course, you know the sun is out fewer hours in the wintertime. It's also not as strong on the panels, so we can't get nearly as much in the wintertime from the solar. So how do you make up that gap is really, really key. The next chart shows what it looks like for wind. Again, it's a challenge. At least it produces something at night. Solar, you can bet that's not going to. Here's 3 different types of days for wind. A real windy day, the top one. This particular project has a capacity of 54 megawatts, and it was pretty close to 54 most hours of the day on the day that the red line graphs. Sporadic wind, that yellow-orange line, and then a very calm day would be like the blue day on the bottom. So that's the biggest challenge as we plan our future resources is how do you match that kind of profile against your load without fossil fuels like gas or coal. So I'm most familiar with the power supply. We also do other things at WPPI to try and keep bills down. When we build generation, we have to borrow money to do it. And the way we do it is we issue bonds. They go as long as 30 years. And so after 10 years, we can refinance bonds. And so in 2022, we locked in an early refinancing of bonds and refinanced 112 million worth. And it was a good time to do it because the interest rates have gone up ever since. We got the bonds locked in at 2.97% out to 2037. So that will save a fair amount of money for our members through that time period. Then my last slide, with content anyway, is the Leading with Purpose slide. It's what the title of our annual report was this year. The real emphasis of that report is how important the relationship between WPPI and members is. We could not serve your needs without you being engaged and participating. You know, building our business plan, reviewing things. We have advisory committees that are made up of members, and they review the services that we provide and say, this one's not valuable anymore, stop doing that. This is what we need, and add services that members want. When members are really engaged, they stay in alignment, and we get the services to your customers that you really need. So we really appreciate that involvement from Norway and all of our other members. Again, a review, reliable, affordable, responsible. Those are the three things we're trying to accomplish with power supply. And we want to be, as the chairman of our board always says, that WPPI is the premier joint action agency. And at first I would smile because I thought, you know, none of us like to brag about things, but it's kind of, it makes you look at things differently. If you're engaged and proud and you care about what we are, we all get a better job accomplished. So thank you for helping with all of that. Are there any questions at this point that you would have for me? Okay. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes,
When you're talking about the wind,
yes.
on a windy day, like how windy does it have to be?
We get full output of the wind turbines at about 14 miles an hour.
So it's not that much.
It's not that high, yeah. Yeah, and it depends a little bit on the vintage of the turbines. They've gotten better and better. The first ones we put in were about 2005 or so. Bishop Hill, the last ones that went in was 2018, and those are, they make more efficient use of the wind, so they can get by at a lower wind speed and still have pretty good output.
I would have thought it would have been more, because those are pretty big turbines.
Yeah, yeah, the ones, well, South Dakota, my parents had a farm in South Dakota, and there's a wind farm going up next to that one, and those are huge turbines. They're 4 megawatts each, 4.3. The top of the blade, when it comes around, is 550 feet. They try and keep it under that level because if they get it higher than that, then there's some Federal Aviation Administration things you have to watch out for. So, all right.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming up here and taking the time to talk to us and go over this.
You're very
We
welcome.
enjoy our relationship with WPPI.
We do too. Yep. And it was great to see you guys here. I understand your school won an award lately too, so
Yeah, thank you.
hopefully that was interesting for some.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 2, USDA rural, public hearing, I'm sorry. I need a motion to go into public hearing.
I make a motion we go into public hearing?
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer? Yes. Mr. Magini?
Yes.
Mr. Morano?
Yes.
USDA Rural Development Grant Police Vehicle Purchase.
So if you guys recall, back in January, we approached council to apply for the USDA Rural Development Grant for our upcoming budget, which we are now in. Council approved us applying for that grant. We received that grant, and then through the processes, I found out we had to have a public hearing for that process. So we are here tonight to kind of retroactively hold this public hearing. We did notice it in the appropriate amount of time. So it won't harm the grant at all, but we do need to have the public hearing and discuss the application if there's anything from the community that want to discuss it. So that's where we are tonight. We have a public hearing and then an action item to kind of reaffirm the council's support.
Do I have anybody out in the public that has any comment or questions on the police vehicle purchase with the grant that we're getting?
If you want, I can kind of just talk about what the grant is.
And I will let you do that. Go ahead.
So for this grant, and apparently we've done this prior, where the USDA provides us a certain percent of grant funding. This year it's 55% for a police vehicle, and we decided to go the route of a pickup truck instead of a squad car, with the idea of being able to repurpose these vehicles in a better fashion for other departments down the road, which obviously that's a little more expensive. The grant from Rural Development is going to cover $41,500, and our portion is roughly $34,100 for the fully equipped vehicle. We're hoping to have an order for 2024. Things are still delayed, there's a good chance we will roll the entire amount into the next fiscal year if we can't get there. But in the second page is the application we did submit to show that percentage breakdown of what each entity would contribute.
And I just would like to add, this year we went with the truck because we felt like when they're no longer usable for the police department, it would be good for us to be able to move these vehicles over into public works or electrical department, wherever we would need them.
Yeah, certainly the long-term usability is hopefully will be better than the cars.
Do I have any council comments? Questions? If not, do I have a motion to go back into a regular session?
Make motion, we go back in regular session.
Support.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Manzini?
Yes.
Mr. Morano?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Now we'll move on to item number 3, USDA Rural Development Grant, police vehicle purchase.
So again, it wasn't clear if we had to have a motion, but I just felt like it wouldn't hurt. So my recommendation is that the council just motion to reaffirm the council support for that USDA Rural Development Grant for that police vehicle.
If I have no other questions or comments, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that the council reaffirms its support of the USADA Rural Development Grant for the purchase of the police vehicle.
Support.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Manzini?
Yes.
Mr. Morano?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes. Item number 4, electric department, cold storage building.
So we've discussed this at a previous council meeting. At the time, we tabled it. Scott from our election department wasn't able to attend that meeting, and this is for his department. So we're waiting for him to be available. He is now available, so we are bringing it back to council. If you recall, what this is the building across from the DPW and the electric department. It has 3 garage doors facing the street. Those doors are inoperable. So the request was to replace those 3 garage doors with operating garage doors, and the idea is that we have a better use of the space, easier to maneuver heavy equipment around, save time to do so, and at the same time, hopefully freeing up space to bring in some of the equipment we have outside, such as transformers, which can be in the elements, but would like to have some of those stored inside. The other aspect, just from me, as I went down there to look at it, is in general, is if council is interested in this project, I think it's good to look at that building and other city buildings just in general as making sure we are keeping those buildings up to date, that they don't fall into disrepair, that we set the example in these areas that the city buildings are as best as they can be. And if this is a building we would want to continue to use, I think that's important to do, and I think this would be a good first step to do that. So Scott is here. If you want to ask him any questions. The concrete work I don't have in my recommended motion, as we are going to intend to do that work ourselves, so that would just be coming out of basic maintenance and building improvement line item where we would pull that line.
That's, you got it down to 10 grand?
Yeah, the 10 grand is just the doors, and the concrete, I said, we would just pull that from our general building maintenance budget.
I have one question. Scott, you weren't here, but I did, and you weren't here to come over there with me, and I went over there with a couple other employees, and one of their suggestions was even if we had one big, one working door to be feasible, they thought that would be enough. Is there a reason, and we kind of directed Dan, or I thought we did that night, just to see, if that's feasible for this time.
So we did look at that, and unfortunately, the doors that are there are only 10 foot wide. They're 10 by 10. So you can't really pull anything in and maneuver it to the side. It's just kind of a straight shot. The doors aren't wide enough. In order to widen it, would almost be impossible because it's a post frame building.
But
So
but even if we didn't widen it, why do you need all three?
in order to have 3 pieces of equipment in there, if you only do one, you really only get one bay freeing up, which kind of, I wouldn't say defeats the purpose, but doesn't accomplish the goal of making that whole side of the building usable.
What kind of equipment? Because at that time, there was no big equipment in there.
So we keep our trencher and mini excavator in there, chippers in there, there's a lot of stuff, just off the top of my head.
You're not talking like, but bulldozer, I'm thinking big equipment, stuff that can't be moved around.
Correct.
Because I was looking at the other end, because you already have an opening there.
Right. So the issue with the door on the gable end, it works just fine, but without fail, every time you need a piece of equipment, it's the one buried in the building. So you have to spend all this time jockeying equipment in and out, wasting time, whereas if we just had the operational doors on the eave, we could pull our equipment out very efficiently.
Well, all three doors are aligned up with each other, so what's this feasibility, just so you don't have to move it a couple extra feet over?
Yes, ma'am, the idea is that each piece of equipment will have its own bay, and you'll be readily accessible to grab that piece of equipment when you need it. And oftentimes when we need this equipment, it's, a lot of times we're in kind of a hurry to get it out. Not to, like, a couple years ago, it was like 2 winters ago, the end door got damaged. We weren't able to get in there for quite a while, honestly. So that kind of hindered us as well.
But like the chipper and that, them are usually emergency.
Now this is a storm that comes through, but yeah, normally it's
No,
not. I guess ultimately we need to do something with the doors because there's holes in them. So my suggestion would be to revamp them and get them operational so we can utilize the building in which it was designed to do. There is actually a 4th door that's boarded up. That one I would just leave alone. It's actually was done at a pretty quality workmanship on it. Just leave that one alone. But the 3 doors that are existing, it would be good to have those operational again.
I think right now what it looks like is everything's pretty much down the long center of that building, because everything has to come out this door. I think the idea is then you take everything that's in the center, we're shifting that so it's lined up to each door, then that would hopefully open up all that back and that other door, so we can start bringing equipment.
Is there a reason why we're not storing some of that equipment? Because I know years ago that equipment was in the electrical building, so you had, most of that was. I'm not saying all of it, but most of it was.
The stuff that's in cold storage, we temporarily put like the trencher, we had it in our building for 1 winter, but normally that is kept in cold storage. That's where we've always tried to maintain that. This is ergonomics, I guess, trying to make workability better, that when you need a piece of equipment, you don't have to spend an hour digging it out. Efficiency.
And I understand that, but I'm just thinking, 1 door, why do you gotta have 3?
If the
Right in
door-
a row, they're all right there together.
Yeah, I guess if the doors were wider, if there's a double door, then you could maneuver equipment in, but being only 10 foot wide, you have no angle ability. You're kind of stuck moving it just straight back, especially with our building being
Because
directly.
the doors
across.
won't be any bigger, they'll all be 10-foot doors.
Correct. So you have three bays to pull equipment in versus 1.
Because if you just do like one, then we might have one lined up here, then a bunch of equipment stacked, so now everything in that bay is gonna have to come out to move the other stuff in the other bays to come out. So it is an efficiency thing. If we don't replace them, I think we should probably start looking at taking them out and just closing them off like we did the 4th door, just from, again, going back to keeping the building looking presentable as a city building.
Scott, how much productivity do you think you're losing?
It depends. I mean, if you're.
It's an ROI question, right?
Yeah,
If you can show savings here,
Yeah,
right?
the chippers, like say you need a chipper and that's buried in there, it'd take you an hour to take it out.
So how many times does that happen a year?
Between us and DPW, I don't know, maybe half dozen times. You got 2 guys digging stuff out, so that's what?
12 hours a
12
year?
hours a year? I'm just guessing, it might be more than that, it might be less, I really don't know.
I was really trying to help you there, by the way.
Well, and there's other things, if we can make this building more efficient, we can put more stuff in there. Right now, it's not being utilized
I get
the way that
it. It was designed a certain way to have working doors, and it's not being used that way.
And there's
anymore.
also stuff in there that doesn't move at all.
100%.
There's a lot of stuff.
Part of that stuff from, was it unit number 4 in that?
Yes.
All that.
And that's in the corner where that
Right.
door's boarded up.
I've
That's-
seen that.
Leave that alone.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff in that.
Well, by the time you
back
board,
that needs to be
if you were gonna board those up, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's gonna cost money too, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I'd rather have 3 working doors there
Right, I mean, I
than
think
board it up.
it's a two reason thing. It's efficiency, yes, and then again, it's like, I do think we should, you know, when we can, set that example of a good looking.
If I had a 3-car garage, I would like all 3 doors to be functioning. I think that's appropriate use.
And so these
Well,
are
everybody
annual.
would like that. I would like 3 doors on mine too, but sometimes you gotta look at the budget too.
And we did budget for this.
It is budgeted?
Yes.
Okay.
it is.
It is. We are under budget in both aspects. We had 6,000 for concrete building renovations and then 10,000 for doors. We're under in both of those.
Okay.
And we're gonna do the concrete house. We
Yep.
got talent on a crew. We can do it.
Any other questions for Scott or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion to approve the replacement of the 3 garage doors using Delta Door Company in the amount not to exceed $10,000.
Support.
Offer.
Me.
Mr. Mankini?
Yes.
Mr. Morrow?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Blue?
No.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to number 5, Resolution 2023-16, School Bus Safety Week, October 16th through the 20th, 2023. I'd like to have that council acknowledge this and the public to acknowledge it. It's very important when the school buses are going through town, when we have children on them, to be watching for them and make sure when the sign's out that we stop. And then we also got up by the school, you know, where the buses are picking up, to watch very carefully up there. So, we would like to acknowledge that. Do I have a motion on resolution 2023-16?
Can I jump in just for a second?
Go right ahead.
As the
You probably know more.
as the
You probably
transportation
know more.
director at Norway Vulcan Area Schools, the biggest confusing part is the flashing lights. It's just like any other flashing light. If it's flashing yellow, just like a light hanging in the street, that means just caution. If it's flashing red, that means stop. For some reason, when they're on the back of a bus, people get all confused. Oh, the lights were flashing, so were they red or were they yellow? If they're red, you stop. If they're yellow, slow down, just like you do traveling. It's a nice little system we have. You know, all those lights and colors, they're all uniform and the same. Knock on wood, we haven't had any bad incidents with buses and students and people getting off and on, but we do quite frequently get phone calls. I shouldn't say quite frequently. I'm going to say it half a dozen times a year, where a bus driver will let me know that someone went by them at a high rate of speed, not necessarily violating a flashing red light stop, but going by on a very high rate of speed and in a dangerous manner. And each one of those, let's say half a dozen instances, you know, someone could pay an ultimate price, obviously. So please pay attention, educate yourself, understand the times of the day and the locations that buses are going to be driving around, and just slow down and give everyone some grace. That's my speech.
And thank you for your input. We're very lucky to have the busing director here with
Yeah.
us tonight. If there's no other questions, do I have a motion on this resolution?
I would like to recommend that the City Council of the City of Norway recognize October 16th through 20th, 23 as School Bus Safety Week by passing the attached resolution, 2023-16, and to encourage all residents to become aware of school bus safety.
Support.
Mr. Morrow?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Mrs. Blue?
Yes.
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. Mankini?
Yes.
I'm gonna move on to mayor council comments. Scott?
I have nothing for tonight.
I have none, thank you.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Once again, I'd like to talk about the tree property line limb issue. I've had more people come to me with the issue. It seems like every time I bring it up, I don't hear anything that's getting done. So I'm asking our city attorney and our city manager, where are we at with that?
I haven't found many places that have that type of ordinance. Again, I think it's tough for us to legislate and enforce that. If that's something the council would like to see an ordinance brought, we can develop something to bring in. That's just, it's gonna be tough, I think, to find that property line and look up and enforce someone to cut their limbs that are hanging over
Most,
property.
most municipalities, I did look a little bit, Jeff, don't deal with that. Just so you know, I'm not saying we shouldn't or we shouldn't look into it.
No.
And I think there's kind of a reason, you know.
City right-of-way property, we do. The boulevard trees, things like that on city property. That doesn't typically extend into private property, but again, if council would like to see something brought, we certainly can develop it. The attorney and I will likely try to review to make sure the authority is there for us to do something like that. And if so, we can develop something.
And I don't want you to think it's going unnoticed, because it was brought to my attention by both fellas to help me look into it too. We just don't really have an answer to it right now.
Yeah, I think it can cause blight, right? Because what happens is, when those limbs hang over garages or homes, it wrecks the roofs to a certain point. That's a very expensive thing for homeowners to replace, which then can go unreplaced, and then of course, when you start getting older homes and things like that, it can lead to...
And I agree with you 100%. I guess that's not where it falls on. It falls on, is it the city's responsibility to take care of that, or is it the homeowner's?
No, I agree.
That's where the catch is, Jeff.
I just took a tree down because it was affecting my neighbor's garage this summer.
Right.
But some neighbors aren't gonna do that, right? So, and that's the bottom line. So now you got blood feuds going on at the
Right, and then I guess, you know, if I'm stepping out of line,
Oh, I
you,
understand.
both you
Some bad
guys,
things going on.
is, do we want to be the director of that? That's where the problem.
I'd like to see it on the agenda as a agenda item, so we can vote it and say, do we wanna do that? Do we wanna look into it?
Discussion.
Right? At least, like you said, you want direction, so let's get it on the agenda, and then the five of us can vote on it. And if it's a nay, it's a nay. If it's yea, it's yea, right?
Well, I think before you vote on it, you gotta find out.
No, I
exactly-
mean, to move forward, Ken, to try to do
Oh,
something.
just to move
Either let it go as is, or do we wanna,
Do you guys
Try to
want
put
to
something
kind
together.
of, us to try to bring a sample ordinance, or would you rather just have a straight discussion and then we'll kind of develop one from there?
No, I think you should have a sample, because that's the problem that we're having, we're running into.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
most municipalities do not.
Yeah.
correct,
get
I
it.
totally understand.
Yeah.
We'll do.
Oh, and the other thing is, with certain property on Main Street, I see this weekend, there's a bunch of garbage hauled into the backyard. I just would like to get updates on, there's a lot of blight there, there's a lot of unused vehicles parked there. Are we ticketing, are we doing things to
Yeah, we-
encourage
we-
that
we
thing to
ticket
get
it,
cleaned
we
up?
do all, yeah, we have that and others, it's a process.
That's all I have.
To piggyback on Jeff's, just overall broad, I mean, I know we have, and we asked specifically about blight, during your interview, you know, and I know it can be the bane of some
I think I
people's
took
existence.
A sip of water and a deep
Yeah,
breath. when I answered
yeah,
that
you
question.
did, kind of leaned back a little bit. I understand that. And I know there's a lot of big ticket issues, but I also feel that just overall blight, you know, in general, is something that I think it's time to really start to focus on and see, is there something we can do about it? So just maybe a better general discussion.
Well, Steve Erickson Day again, coming up here this weekend, obviously, and
Yeah.
that's one of the, you know, that Main Street's going to be, that's what it's about, right, between the run and everything else, and it's just-
And other areas.
Maybe
not just that.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
if we could have a
Right.
form a committee to, you know, so it doesn't have to be taking up council meeting time.
yeah, it's just, it's just unfortunate, but so.
Ideas. Thank you.
Did you have any comments?
That was it.
Okay.
I don't like blight.
All right, well, I have a very important comment to make tonight, and it has to do with this ribbon I have here in my hand, which I thought Rico would take that away from me, but I'm glad you did it. Just so everybody knows, our school, and Rico can help me more about the award and that, but got the Blue Ribbon Award. I'm just so proud of our school to get this. Not many schools have got it. I believe 2 in the whole UP. Am I right, Rico?
We're up to 3 public schools now and
Okay.
one private school.
You know, so I want to thank all the students, the staff over at the school. You know, this is something that Norway should really be proud of. And, you know, you guys make us look good, but the school, the students, the teacher, you guys did all the hard work. We didn't, but I just wanted to recognize the school for that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I sang a lot of praises at the last meeting. Maybe that's why it was a 7-minute meeting. I did a lot of talking, but yeah, we can't be, we have a really good problem right now. We're struggling with how to celebrate this. You know, out of all the issues that we could be, you know, worried about, you know, we've got a lot of stuff figured out at school. We need to figure out how to celebrate
Well, it's
these
It's
successes.
school of choice, right? So why wouldn't you advertise that?
Oh, we have, and we will.
And being a past school board member, a past
Oh,
student of Norway High School,
When was that, Ken? How many years ago?
I'm really proud of this.
Yeah.
Excellent.
well,
Good job.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that Mayor Brew, as School Board President Brew, had a big hand in facilitating a lot of the changes at Norway Vulcan Area Schools. So thank you for that.
You guys want a hug?
I do have a question. This is for Scott.
Yes, sir.
Any word on the clock thing on Main Street?
Yes.
Yes.
I believe it was provided to you?
Yes, we did get it.
I just like,
It was in the executive.
yeah, I'd just like to have it
And then we weren't here
TV.
last week because we were gonna go to the DDA, but we were going to them meetings to see if they wanted to have any part of that. I don't,
Yeah.
Trish, was that brought up at all? Probably it was.
They weren't given the whole thing, they just discussed it.
They just discussed it, so we're gonna go to them and see, and
We would need, what, about 15,000
I just wanted public to know.
more, I think it was 20 something.
oh, what's going on?
Yeah.
There's we have some funds, we have various different funds that we can try to help contribute to it. But ultimately, I think it's gonna kind of fall on PDA's shoulders to take the brunt of it.
Well, I know there was a time that you said there might be grants out there or something that we could try and,
well, it was just partial, that one he
Yeah,
stopped.
some community development or community engagement fund through WPPI, those are the types of things I was referring to. I think what I said, about $5,500
Yeah.
we could kind of come up with
Yep.
to help further the cause. So it's an expensive endeavor. I didn't realize it was gonna be quite that much.
I was
Yeah?
surprised when I
Yeah.
seen it too.
But I think it could be awesome. According to what I read on that, it's gonna have like wireless communication, so if you wanna sell advertising space or upcoming events, those types of things, you'd be able to kind of plug into it and customize it, so it'd be pretty neat.
The DDA was really excited.
Okay.
I think at least we know what it's gonna take. I think it's something we certainly can look at,
And I'm
especially
sure,
coming.
do we have to probably talk to Holmberg's too?
I did.
Not Holmberg's, Tabarini's.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
right.
was in their office and they understand what we're going through and what we're looking at.
Okay,
And we did
Great,
find the
thank you.
documents, and we own it, so.
okay.
The city owns that.
We do.
Awesome.
Yeah, it is our responsibility to maintain it and upgrade it and do everything to it, so.
So we have power directly to it then? Doesn't go through TAF?
What's that, sir?
We have power directly to that? Does it go through TAF?
I believe it's metered on its own meters.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. that'd
Thanks
be-
for looking into that too.
Yeah.
another thing is, correct, Grant, that if you have a fence, you're a homeowner, you are to take care of the backside of the fence also? Like cutting your grass, weed whacking, if there's garbage, lead up against the fence because that fence is considered on their property?
If I'm understanding you correctly, yes. I mean, your property, your responsibility.
Okay, because
Clean it
there's a
up.
lot, I've had a lot of complaints that people, you know, with fencing around their house, the homeowner with the fence are not taking care of the property on a the backside.
Just because you have a fence doesn't mean that the rest of the property you're not responsible for.
Okay.
I could see a lot of times too, if you don't get that permission, you have to be a foot off. So I can see a lot of people not cutting around like that.
Yeah.
Which is still their responsibility.
That's all.
Don't forget the Ferguson Day this weekend.
Oh, yes. Please, please come out and enjoy Leif Erikson Day. A lot of hard work goes into that. And hopefully we get a lot of people in town to enjoy it.
I don't have to say.
Only that it does kick off with the Leafs run, which is going to start here Saturday morning. So if anyone hasn't signed up to run, we really would like that participation. Jeff's going to run the 10K, I heard. So be there to start.
We'll cheer you
this.
on.
10 steps from my truck into my store. That's gonna be the extent.
And also just a reminder to everyone, October 9th, we start the construction on Main Street. We do expect that to go up until that Friday at least, so 1 week.
We did fix the traffic nightmare down there, but we're gonna have it out on the highway where they're gonna go down the 2 streets. We're not gonna have that bottleneck, right, coming down to Main. Remember how everything was closed off?
It's going to be for the construction?
No, for when we're closing Main Street on Saturday.
Oh, on Leaf? Yeah. We'll have.
Remember we had the 2 side streets closed
Yep,
and Main Street?
Yeah, we're gonna have detours.
Okay, good.
We're having a meeting tomorrow, actually,
Yeah.
for all of that.
Perfect.
That's all.
Brad, did you have anything?
Nothing, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Girls have anything? No? Scott? I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Sports.
Mrs. Brew?
Yes?
Mr. Kramer?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Moraro?
Yes.
Mr. Pop?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
Carlson, you spot me $20?